Good morning guys, Jay here. Welcome back to another video. As you can see, I'm out in the city again. It's a nice sunny day, but what you can't see is how cold it is right now. Today I'm going to be doing an X100V 1 year review. I've had this since it was first released, and since that time I've been using it pretty much daily for all my street work. And so I think it's finally time for me to give you my thoughts about it after using it for so long. So let's get started. So before I talk about the pros of the X100V, let me just go over the cons and get that out of the way. I did mention this in my previous video. This is not a beginner-friendly camera. Straight out of the box, you're not going to get all the benefits of the X100V. And the whole selling point of the X100V is that it's a niche camera packed with a lot of features that'll help you. But the problem is, when you get it out of the box, it doesn't really have all the features ready to go. You'd have to actually know how to go into the menu settings and customize it yourself. And that's kind of a pain, especially if you're a beginner and you don't know how to work a camera. You have to flip through the manual. And one of the problems with the Fujifilm manuals is it's sometimes not worded well enough for the beginner to understand. And if you're not a long-time Fuji user, you're gonna have to wrap your head around the problems of the manual. And speaking of the manual, when it comes to troubleshooting, the way Fujifilm explains certain things is a little bit ambiguous. And so most of the time when you're faced with a problem, especially when two features of the camera clash, you're not going to be able to find it on the manual. And for a beginner, I guess that would be a huge headache. But fortunately, you're going to have a great community. There's a Fuji X100 community out there who are very passionate, who are very knowledgeable, and who will definitely help you out, especially if you're faced with these kind of problems. So I guess one last thing is the Fujifilm X100V is marketed as a weather sealed camera with a huge fat asterisk. When you get it straight out of the box, it's not going to be weather sealed. It's not, and that's one of the problems that a lot of people will face, is that they're going to think, oh yeah, it's a weather sealed camera. But if you take that camera out into the rain straight out of the box, you're going to have a bad time. I would say that what Fujifilm should have done is that they should have just included the necessary accessories for you in the box, so that when you take it out, you'd be confident that it is weather sealed, instead of going out and buying third parties, paying extra for that kind of privilege to have it weather sealed. So yeah guys, that's probably all the cons that I can think of at the moment. There really isn't too many, and if you're a seasoned Fujifilm user, you probably wouldn't think of these as a con. You probably take it for granted. But I think for beginners, this is a huge point to take into consideration. So cons out of the way, let's talk about the pros. So now let's talk about the pros. Now, if you go onto YouTube, there's so many people who've done reviews of the X100V, and they've no doubtedly talked about the good points of the camera. So I won't go over the most common ones too much, but of course the X100V is a very well-built camera. When you hold it in your hand, it feels very premium. The solid construction, the metal, the aluminum, everything about this camera feels really, really good. Another thing about the X100V is that it has an updated lens. The previous X100 cameras, they all use the past generation 23mm f2 lens, and a lot of people report that that lens is just a little bit soft when you stop it down to f2. With the new lens, it's actually very sharp at all apertures, and that's what makes it really, really good. On top of that, the focusing on the new camera, because of the new processor, is very fast and snappy. For most occasions, it does obviously struggle in low light just a little bit, not too much. I wouldn't say it's a detriment, but yeah, lens is very nice. Now there's no doubt that the X100V is kind of like a street photographer's camera. As much as I hate to say that, it is kind of geared towards street photographers. Why? Because it has all the tactile dials that you'll need for photography, the aperture, the ISO, and the shutter speed, all on the camera body itself. You don't have to get into the menus to change any settings. The other thing is that the lens, I forgot to mention, has a leaf shutter, and if you don't know what a leaf shutter is, check out my video on it. But the leaf shutter essentially is very, very quiet, and for street work it is very discreet, and you can barely hear it when it goes off in mechanical shutter mode. And finally, the X100V has a hybrid viewfinder, and you might be asking, oh, why is that important? Well, sometimes you want to feel more connected with the streets, and having it in optical viewfinder, you know, I can't really describe it. You have to experience it yourself, but the optical viewfinder really makes you feel more connected to everything around you. When you're looking through an electronic viewfinder, sometimes it can look a little bit fake, especially with the film simulations on there. You don't really get a good sense of your surroundings sometimes. And so the optical viewfinder just gives you a true view of what you're seeing around you. So the X100V now has a flip-up LCD screen. This is a huge benefit for this camera, because now for the first time you can get low to the ground and be able to see what exactly you're taking a photo of. And for street photography, it's always good to mix up the angle at which you shoot. If you shoot from a lower angle, you can add a more dynamic, you know, image. I will flip up the LCD. One huge benefit of the X100V is that now it has a 4-stop built-in ND filter, and the fact that Fujifilm has recently come through with a firmware update which now allows you to use the ND filter in video mode as well. This was not the case when the camera first came out, so a lot of people were complaining that they wanted to see the ND filter be in video. Now you have it, so everyone who's wanting to buy an X100V now, you get the benefit of using the ND filter in video mode, which is fantastic. Biggest reasons why you would want to buy a Fujifilm camera, and the X100V especially, is the film simulations. A huge reason why a lot of users go to the Fujifilm system is because of this feature, and I gotta say, the film simulations have really made me think about shooting JPEGs a lot more. I used to shoot in RAW because it has better latitude in post-processing, but with the JPEG images coming out of the X100V, it just looks so good that you stop thinking about RAW that much. And another great thing about the recipes is that inside the camera you have extra settings that allows you to customize these film simulations further, and a lot of people in the community have created their own recipes which will allow new users to kind of get a good start and experiment with new recipes until they're comfortable enough creating their own and just the whole fun of the Fujifilm cameras is finding that perfect recipe for you, making that recipe, and then sharing it with the community so that everyone can enjoy together. So to sum it up, Fujifilm X100V, if you're in the market for this camera and you're still on the fence about it, I would say go for it. Definitely check, if you can get a good deal, fantastic, but if you just want a YOLO, just go for it, because if you ask anyone who's owned this camera, they'll say it's a good pick. And certainly after watching so many reviews of this camera, it's pretty much a no-brainer at this point. So don't think too hard, buy this camera. You're gonna have many years of fun with this, and personally I'm gonna be holding on to this camera for as long as it keeps working. And I don't see myself using any other camera for street photography purposes for the years to come. So my name is Jay, and until next time.